Serious, therapists, psychiatrists of Reddit. What is something that most people think they are alone in experiencing, feeling, thinking? I think the most common thing I find in my practice is that people assume they need to get rid of their negative feelings. Anxiety, anger, sadness, guilt. These are normal feelings everyone experiences, and it's okay to feel these things and acknowledge them. Learning how to sit with negative feelings is something I think I've tried hard to normalize with my clients. Feeling crazy. I would say the majority of my clients at some point ask if they are crazy. It's sad that mental illness is seen as black and white, sane or crazy, and not a continuum that can ebb and flow over time. Oh, there are so many common beliefs people have, yet people view them as their own. Personal, private, shameful, burden. Some examples. I'm not good enough. I'm not intrinsically valuable. If I'm not perfect, people won't love me. I have to hide my vulnerability. I'll be revealed as a fraud, imposter. Everyone else knows what they are doing except me. Common grief reactions. Most people think they are crazy when they can't concentrate and have memory problems months into grief. This is very normal for a significant loss. Also, feelings of guilt and relief in the case of long illnesses. Most people feel they should have done more despite doing everything well, and many feel guilt at the relief they feel at having a caregiver role come to an end. Also, many people experiencing a loss continue to speak aloud or in their heads to the deceased person. I experienced this when I lost my sister, 29, to breast cancer. I hadn't spent much time with her because we were all sure she'd be fine. Once she passed away, I remember the day it happened and then nothing else for a year. Ended up paying for 3 years of college and never going. Not the best of times. The spotlight effect. Many people worry about what people think of them. This causes a lot of anxiety. The reality is that no one is really paying anyone else any attention, as everyone is focused on themselves. Remember that time when you were so embarrassed it still causes you to writhe in bed at night when you recall it? No one else has given it another thought. Seeing shadows, figures, or other things, or hearing murmurs, voices, or similar during the half asleep half awake state are not schizophrenic hallucinations. It's an in-between dream state and does not mean you have schizophrenia. It's normal. Also, sudden, unwelcome, sometimes even violent thoughts that pop into your head are also normal and not indicative of psychopathology or sexual perversion. They're intrusive thoughts, and as long as you don't think you're going to act on them, there's no reason to worry about them. The more you attend to them and perseverate on them, the more they're going to bother you. Like the pink polka dot elephant. Frankly, I am a generally well-adjusted individual who has never self-harmed a day in her life, with a comfortable life and no particular desire to die. But sometimes when I drive over a bridge, I think about what would happen if I were to drive over it. I do not want to hurt myself or anyone else involved, but I still wonder. Likewise, I do not want to kiss my boss. I'm straight, and even if I weren't, she's not my type. But sometimes when we're talking, I wonder what would happen if I kissed her. Also, no one's got their crap 100% together. Not even me. And I'm here to help you. Just because my shirt buttons line up does not mean my socks match. Don't get down on yourself thinking you're the only one. You're just doing your best, and that's normal. Surprised I missed this considering the AMAs I've done on sexual assault. Having an orgasm or experiencing sexual arousal during rape or sexual abuse is an incredibly underdiscussed and shameful secret that many victim survivors carry with them, often for years or decades. I can say more if people are interested and this doesn't get buried. That they don't belong in the world, i.e., this world is not their home. It can make people feel really alien to this world, but is a recurring theme in a lot of psychopathology. A lot of patients have a hard time opening up about this, often because they see it as a more serious symptom of mental illness. Wow, I feel like this all the time. Also, the feeling for me is more like everyone around me is the alien ones. And when I try to talk and relate to them, they don't comprehend anything I am trying to get across or feel. It's like I can feel really powerful emotions, but no one can share that feeling with me. IDK, what the problem is, tack on some general anxiety, and that's me in a nutshell. CBT therapist here. The moment of disclosure, so to speak. When will the others realize that I can't figure crap out? When will they realize that I am utterly incompetent, etc.? This is actually really common : being a psychopath, especially as an 13-25-year-old, it's relatively normal to feel disconnected and numb regarding others. Even if these feelings are to an unhealthy level, it's almost never psychopathy. Depression, anxiety and more common disorders all can lead to feeling profoundly disconnected from society to such an extent where you are numb to potential harm being caused. It's not necessarily healthy, but it's not psychopathy. Anyone can become an addict. Just like there's no one-size-fits-all face for what a murderer looks like, addicts come in all shapes, sizes, socioeconomic statuses, education levels, etc. Gambling addiction is real, too. I hold 3 licenses: mental health counseling, substance abuse counseling, gambling counseling, and I'm blown away when I hear other professionals talk about a client just having a gambling addiction. It ruins lives, too. The absolute worst mindset a patient can have is believing that they are alone in feeling the way they do. Understanding that other people have the same feelings and problems, or worse, may not solve their issues, but contextualizing it takes away the belief that they're insurmountable. Feelings of envy, where one convinces their conscience that they simply do not have the facilities to perform as well as another, regardless other associated merits. This one feels so awful. It is a nasty feeling. Desiring your hardest to be someone else and knowing you'll never be. But that's when I have to tell myself, hey, maybe somebody looked at me one day and felt the same envy. I'm not so bad. I work as an intervention specialist for a children's clinic. Of my 30+ clients of children, 318, I find most of them have difficulty voicing their feelings and suppress them to a point of almost becoming mute. I work alongside LMFT, licensed marriage and family therapists. We have 1 psychiatrist and a nurse practitioner. The children we specialize in are foster children. It is extremely heartbreaking that these kids know they are in the system, and when they are taken from their homes due to abuse, drugs, or neglect, they become emotionally exhausted. They just want mom and dad. I always reassure them that they are not wrong for continuing to love mom and dad even if they did cause harm to them. Most of them think that something is wrong with themselves in that aspect. We are human. We have similarities like crazy. I thought I was the only one who lowered down the volume of the radio as I got close to my destination. Thanks Reddit for taking away my one unique quality: that a therapist or medication can just fix them. This expectation was probably one of the hardest things to encounter in a therapeutic setting. A therapist can give you all the tools in the world, but it's your responsibility to use them. You really have to be an active participant in treatments to reap the full benefits rather than a passive recipient. Do the between session work, because that is how you'll generalize what you're learning in session to the real world. A similar thought applies to medications. They don't just fix you. They alleviate symptoms, yes, but unless you do the work during those periods of reprieve, the minute you stop medication, things will probably start reoccurring. Medication lifts the fog of the symptoms, and you have to take advantage of that lucidity to do some actual work to see long-term treatment gains. Not everyone needs medication, but what follows should go without saying. Try not to skip doses. That can really mess you up. In short, to whom does this treatment belong? It is your treatment, not your therapist's, not your mother's, not your ex's. Take control of it. You have a say and you can have an effect on treatment outcome. Grief. You get to be mad that others live on. You get to be mad that others love and are loved. You're not the only person on earth with this jealousy, nor this sorrow. Perhaps your friends and family never knew this person, and cannot relate to you specifically in this moment, and cannot offer you some kind of existential comfort. But this does not mean that this feeling is yours, and yours alone. You are not an island. From working with troubled and at-risk teens in the past, and currently to some extent, their grieving processes and how they handle losing a close friend or family member always poses a unique challenge for structuring supporting counseling. The whole nobody knows understands how I feel concept and claim is very common, and most folks are hesitant to divulge much, if any, details regarding their true thoughts and feelings associated with the loss. One of the only things that has helped me reach out and connect to some of these folks is using an appropriate level of self Disclosure: citing my own unexpected loss of a parent as a teenager and revealing how I dealt with and continue to deal with the grieving process related to that event. Your ants. Automatic negative thoughts. You have these weird feelings where suddenly your brain is like, hey, remember that time you fricked up? You fail as a human. Or you wake up and before you even manage to brush your teeth, you're feeling a giant case of dread as all the dumb crap you did starts to haunt you, when it really wasn't that bad. You need to crush your ants. It will probably involve a journal. You write down why it made you feel like crap, a couple reasons why it wasn't that bad, and 3-4 things you can do to avoid feeling that way in the future. Teenagers who think they are special and mature for their age. It's almost all of them. It's kinda funny, actually. Intrusive thoughts. Bizarre, disgusting, sexual, violent thoughts. Almost everyone seems to get them, but they don't mean that you really think that way or will behave that way. Thoughts of suicide. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that these thoughts are inherently unimportant or insignificant. I'm just always surprised how many people don't realize that so many people have, at the very least, thoughts of what it would be like to die or consider briefly if it would be worth it. I wouldn't say the majority of people have had suicidal thoughts, but a much higher percentage do than many would expect. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the idea of suicide popped in my head, and I'm terrified. It's acceptable to have that thought when you're suffering, as long as it's not acted on. That feeling that the thought itself is terrible is a good sign in some ways. To echo other posts, that leads me to another point. These are just thoughts. Thoughts are just words and images that cross your mind. They don't have any true power over you, inherently. That being said, it becomes a problem when thoughts becomes too repetitive, obsessions, too powerful, intrusive, or the person is willing to act on them. TLDR. Many people think of suicide. Don't be afraid to tell your therapist. If you're worried about your thoughts of suicide, see a therapist. We've heard it before and we want to support you. You're not alone. I think people may be reluctant to bring it up because they think their therapist might send them to the hospital. Social anxiety. Not wanting to talk on the phone, avoiding big groups, not wanting to go to a bar. The list goes on and on. Most people experience this to varying degrees at varying points of their lives. The best way to overcome social anxiety is to do the things that make you nervous on a regular basis. Anxiety won't kill you. Anxiety won't kill you. Hard to remember in the moment, though. A majority of my clients, all ages and stages of life, feel like they have no friends and want to make new friends. They are uniformly embarrassed to tell me this and feel like others around them don't struggle socially and just easily connect with others. Someone needs to develop a Tinder type app just for finding new friends with similar interests because it will make a bundle. I think most people when asked do you think you're alone in this they would answer no. But it is stunning that amount of people who think other people notice what they are doing. No one is as aware of what you are doing than you, seems to be the cause of large amounts of social anxiety. This realization is actually what has helped me greatly with my social anxiety. When I'm feeling socially anxious, which is frequent, I have to remind myself of how little I think about the crap other people are doing and know that it's the same for them. I'm always so focused on myself, so it does make sense. 1. Thoughts about suicide. These are very common. And while we always take them seriously, an awful lot of therapy clients have occasional thoughts about suicide that never escalate to the level of a real threat. It's a pretty normal experience to have when you're going through the emotional ringer. Unfortunately, most people feel afraid that if they talk about these they will freak out others. There's some truth of this because there's a great stigma associated with suicidality, but more people than you'd guess have experienced it, and sharing it with people you care about really helps. 2. That feeling that when you're with people you're not really connected with them or playing a role. No, that's not indicative of some serious psychopathology. It's just the way a lot of our social interactions go. 3. Some subdiagnostic experience of social anxiety. I'm not talking about social anxiety disorder but just the feeling that you are being scrutinized by others and that everything you do with other people could be wrong. Not enough to really disrupt functioning but enough to make life unpleasant. I think this happens at least every now and then to a huge number of people, and it doesn't make you weird. As a therapist for the past 8 years, which is not as much as some, I honestly have seen that most people believe they are alone in just about everything. I theorize that due to the lack of community people have, one contributing factor being social media, it brings people to think they are more alone than ever. People believe that their experience, their feelings, their thinking has never happened to another human being. And in one way they are completely correct. They have a unique bundle of experience through their individual history. However, in another way they are not correct at all. Just because I have not experienced what my clients have experienced, I know others have, and I know I can empathize with them to meet that person's hurt. I then empower that person with the tools they do not know they have in order to get through that hurt. Then I can empower that person to help the next person who is hurting. Because circumstances may change, but once you understand pain and know the tools to help in that pain, you then have the power to help someone else. You have been there. You can then relate more to the next person and show them the way out. I see a lot of clients who feel generally numb, dry, disconnected, and dissatisfied with life, but not in any overt way. They're still functional. They still have relationships and jobs and hobbies. They just feel generally blah. Although most realize it's not a unique condition per se, they think it's a lot more unusual than it really is. Several of them have asked from the start if it's something I have any experience treating. The truth is I probably see this kind of low to moderate depression more than anything else. I work with a lot of parents and most of them have felt like they hate their children at one point or another. This is especially true for young children as they require the most attention and care. The parents love and care about their children for the most part and feel a lot of shame about their hateful thoughts. Parenting is dang hard. Hate and love are such similar emotions, it's amazing. You can flip from one to the other almost instantly. Indifference. Now that would be the concerning one. Everyone seems to have a weak spot or feeling of inadequacy no matter how little or intense. As a counselor to pregnant teens and low-income women, this may be a bit more specialized, but I think it is also a general population struggle. In my specific setting with a young woman one-on-one with another young woman, clients were much more open than I have ever experienced before. Counselors can share a bit about them that might be vulnerable in order to put the client at ease to open up and work through their particular issues. As a therapist who does mostly groups, every so often I like to share this passage by Rod Lang. It pretty much summarizes a lot of clients' experiences of loneliness and isolation. There is something I don't know, that I am supposed to know. I don't know what it is, I don't know, and yet I'm supposed to know, and I feel I'll look stupid if I seem both not to know and not to know what it is I don't know. Therefore, I pretend I know it. This is nerve-wracking, since I don't know what I must pretend to know. Therefore, I pretend to know everything. I feel you know what I am supposed to know, but you can't tell me what it is, because you don't know what I don't know. What it is. You may know what I don't know, but not that I don't know it, and I can't tell you. So you will have to tell me everything. R.D. Lang, not. Everyone in this world has thought about committing suicide to one extent or another. You are not alone. That doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it, but you are not abnormal or crazy for having those thoughts. Society doesn't like to talk about it, but everyone has thought about it at one point or another. Having a fricked up family. Lots of people feel this awful sense of shame, grief that they have a bad relationship, mom, dad, sibs, etc. Allow me to say, this is about as close to a universal experience as there is. Everyone's family is fricked up, to varying degrees of course. Sexual trauma and its after effects. You are not alone. There is help out there. It is a strength to ask for help with your suffering, not a weakness. Clinical psychologist in training here. That is, 3rd year PhD student. Not sure if this has been said yet, but in my experience so far, many of my clients feel that they're the only ones who fear rejection or inadequacy. Seems to be a very pervasive fear, but one that feels to be unique to each person. Individuals will go to great lengths to avoid rejection, even from complete strangers. As a therapist, you're in a powerful position to provide support and acceptance. Suicidal ideation when you are stuck in life. The action is abnormal, but the thought is not. It should not be ignored and you should share it with your support system, friends, family, and counselors. But the thought itself is really not that abnormal. It's just the mental Rolodex flipping the cards looking for a solution. Two things come to mind: feeling disconnected in romantic relationships and feeling socially anxious. These days, especially when it comes to romantic relationships, I have a lot of clients asking how everyone else in relationships is so happy but they aren't. A lot of it is due to what they see on Facebook and Instagram. It's always an interesting conversation to talk about how people show their best sides on social media, but rarely talk about fights or not feeling connected to their partner. Second, people feel anxious about what others think of them. It's a really natural experience, but we rarely express that vulnerability to others. So, we see other people's facades as they look like they're having a great time in social situations or out in public. Even when we're kids, our parents don't usually validate our experience of feeling scared about what others think of us. Rather, they tell us things like, "You're a great kid, everybody likes you," or "if you're nice to people, they'll like you." That just ends up making us feel abnormal for continuing to worry. I think this is one of the most important roles I play as a therapist, to validate people's experiences and to tell them that they're not crazy. Just by feeling understood and that their experience is normal, people start to feel better. People feel alone in their minds, period. I see. Thus far, people are brought up to achieve a life, becoming busy every day in order to achieve an acceptable image that won't be judged or looked down upon. Until they go into retirement, people will feel the need to be productive. If someone succeeds, they will have an image they feel will keep them safe. If someone is not successful in being productive, feeling like a loser, or something must be wrong with me is what the mind will most likely produce. Either way, success or no success isn't going to bring nobody peace of mind. All humans need is shelter, food, water, companionship. Instead, we created a system that is self-achieving. I see a way of living that would end war and poverty. You are enough. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Masters in clinical psychology here. Anxiety is a perfectly normal and healthy human trait. Everyone experiences anxiety during their lives. The mechanism and function of anxiety should be taught in high school to everyone, in the same fashion as sex ed is taught. Boy, would it save people a lot of trouble. Therapist here, and I've got to say it's thoughts of death, suicide. It's super awkward to talk about, but most people, especially if you're experiencing a bit of depression, do in fact think of this from time to time. Everyone from kids to adults thinking that their problems are unique. They're not. A lot of people I see feel that they are the only ones in their peer group, school, work, clubs, teams, even families, who feel a certain way about a situation or just in general emotionally. It's funny when kids think that another kid hates them, and I actually see that other kid. There are two big high schools near me that I get a lot of kids from, and while none of the kids know that I see any specific other kid, I can have two best friends who think that the other is mad at them but are afraid to say anything. In my head I'm like, just tell him. He's thinking the same thing that you are, but people have this idea that their feelings are theirs alone and therefore invalid just because no one else appears to show those feelings. Spoiler alert, if you're feeling it and not showing it out of fear that others aren't feeling it, then they're probably doing the same thing. Oh, and it's okay for feelings to fade in a marriage. There's no such thing as a failed marriage unless it's gone on past its prime. And yes, just like TV shows, some marriages can go on for too long. The rest of your life is a long time, and similar to how you liked certain toys in your childhood that you just grew out of through no fault of your own or the toys, people grow out of each other, too. The things that you loved about a person when you were the 25th of may not, and likely don't, matter when you're 45. Trauma response of any kind. It comes in all shapes and sizes and is individual in nature. For many of the clients that I have seen who have experienced trauma, I think the most common barrier to recovery is the process of taking responsibility for others' actions and or circumstances out of the client's control, resulting in self-blame. To those who have experienced trauma, it is so important that you know that whatever symptoms you have, whatever pain you feel, whatever you are going through, is not something wrong with you. It is something awful that has happened to you. Healing from trauma self-blame is a process that is about changing your mind, which is about the hardest thing a human being can do. The thing is, only you can do it. If a mirror image of you walked in right now and had all of the same things going on, the same experience, the same troubles, the same past, how would you help that person? What would you do for them? Do that for you, because you deserve to feel good. I don't know what you have experienced, but you have to give yourself the benefit of the doubt and treat yourself as you would like others to treat you. Many of my clients believe that functioning people have it all figured out and effortlessly and happily get up each morning and fulfill their adult responsibilities. I spend a lot of time normalizing these feelings and behaviors. So much of the problem comes from believing that feeling overwhelmed or confused is a problem and a game stopper, rather than accepting and learning how to function through those totally normal feelings. Most of my clients struggle with not feeling good enough, whether that be good enough for themselves, family members, or the rest of society. Most of the people who have come in my office are surprised to know that the majority of people most likely, in some capacity, feel this way. Part of it may be their perception of themselves in relation to others or their highlighting of toxic, extra-critical thought. Abuse is another that comes to mind. Most people believe that they deserved it, were defective, or had the world against them. Being repeatedly told you're less than human, whether you're actually told that or someone's actions make you feel that way, is a floodgate for all sorts of toxic, self-shaming thoughts. Unfortunately, most people who experience trauma have these same thoughts and feelings, albeit at varying capacities. The best thing to remember is that we are all the same in our uniqueness, as in although your experience and how you perceive what's happening in your life is unique, there are others out there who have gone through something very similar. The feeling that if others got to know the real them they would not love them, as well as the feeling that something is fundamentally flawed and unfixable about themselves. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.